Thank you, Greg. It's very nice to see you again and to be with devotees in Region 8. It's always a joy. I've been in other regions this year, quite a few actually, but this is the first, oh, actually the second time, because I spoke to the young adults in Region 8 a couple of months ago or so. Anyway, it's very nice to be with you, and you aptly gave the title of my talk, Living in Unity and Surrendering in Love. I wanted to say, though, that the Vedams were very special, very nice, and they transported me back to Sai Kulwan Hall. I even got a little nervous that I might not be back in time for my talk, but it was just really wonderful, those mornings at Sai Kulwan Hall, listening to the Vedams, listening to the bhajans, and then waiting for Swami to come. So I guess I'll get started. The first thing that I wanted to do, though, before I actually began, was to share a slide with you and with the viewers of days gone by. And this was a time in the mid-90s, I believe it was, when you were at the Santa Barbara Psi Center, Greg. And there's some other people in the picture, of course. You can see me there too, much younger. But it was a really fun time that we had together back in those days. And so I came across this picture and I just thought I would share it before I got underway. So anyway, there you are, Greg, much younger, not any more handsomer, I don't think. But
you're very kind.
We both have less hair, though, that's for sure.
Yes, it is.
And I'm without my beard. So anyway, so as you said, my talk is Living in Unity, Surrendering in Love. And I like this picture of Swami because it's, some of you have seen it, I'm sure, but it's, he's making a point about Advaita or non-duality. Sai and all, Sai is one. And so I just thought that would be an apt picture to show with respect to my, one of my themes about unity. And I also decided to place a quote from chapter 12 of the Bhagavad Gita here. Better than meditation is surrender in love, for there follows immediate peace. I was telling someone the other day that, you know, as we get retired and we get a little older and more mature in our spiritual practice, what we really seek, you know, in these years is peace, contentment, a sense of well-being. And surrendering in love will, of course, bring us to that point. But I'll get to that a little bit more later. But this is a very significant point, I think, this idea of, you know, living in unity. It's not possible to surrender in love unless we are living in unity. So this surrender in love, followed by immediate peace, is a promise from chapter 12 of the Bhagavad Gita. And this particular translation was actually translated by Swami himself. This was a New Zealand edition of the Gita, and Swami himself translated this particular chapter. It's a favorite of mine, and several years ago I memorized it and recited it regularly. The next thing I wanted to do, and I have only 2 or 3 more slides really, and I want to show one now and then I'll pause for the rest of them. But I wanted to acknowledge what's underway, not just in the United States, but what's underway throughout the world. We have an unprecedented situation, and many people have been challenged. Many people are challenged very severely. Those of us who are deeply embedded in our spiritual practice seem to float a little bit better than those who don't have such a practice, or who don't have Swami or Jesus, or whoever it is that they lean to as their spiritual preceptor, guide, omnipresent Lord. And so it's a difficult time. I thought I would share a quote by Arundhati Roy, who is an award-winning author who has written several books that have sold very well throughout the entire world. And what she says is this: what is this thing that has happened to us? It is a virus, yes. In and of itself, it holds no moral brief, but it is definitely more than a virus. It has made the mighty kneel and brought the world to a halt like nothing else could. Our minds are still racing back and forth, longing for a return to normality, trying to stitch our future to our past, and refusing to acknowledge the rupture. But the rupture exists, and in the midst of this terrible despair, it offers us a chance to rethink the doomsday machine we have built for ourselves. Nothing could be worse than a return to normality. Historically, pandemics have forced humans to break with the past and imagine their world anew. This one is no different. It is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. We can choose to walk through it, dragging the carcasses of our prejudice and hatred, our avarice, our databanks and dead ideas, our dead rivers and smoky skies behind us. Or, as we will do, we can walk through lightly with little luggage, ready to imagine another world and ready to fight for it. You know, what I especially like about what she says here is that she addresses the environment and the holistic effects of what has occurred, but more importantly, she addresses the opportunities that this has presented for all of us. We've all made great adjustments. This is a testament to it this evening. You know, the weekly programs that we have and the ones that we have throughout the country, and in fact, you know, the SSSIO programs throughout the world. But it's important, as Swami says, to travel with less luggage. And she literally mentions with little luggage. And so what I thought would be important at the onset was just to acknowledge that we are all one, this idea of unity. And somehow we don't always and immediately experience it as such, but it is true. And this virus, more than anything else, I think in recent years, perhaps decades, has shown us very directly how interconnected and interdependent humanity is. And so we must live like it. We must act like it. And so this leads me now into my next area, which is about identity. Because before we can achieve unity, we have to do some self-inquiry about our true identity. Well, of course, Swami talks about this all the time, and he talks about oneness and our union with him and all manner of methods and aspects of unity. But first things first, many times we want to jump the gun, we want to push the envelope. And I know that that's been one practice I've had, and Swami has given me some direct instruction about just slowing down, waiting, digesting the teachings, and not trying to push the envelope. And so when we talk about unity, we have to talk about it from a practical spiritual point of view. Not just, yes, that's the theory, that's the idea, we want to be there, we're working in that direction, but to really do some self-evaluation, to really look at how we identify. Well, if we take it to academia or somewhere there where I've been all my life, you find that people study identity in psychology and sociology, in social psychology, anthropology, and other areas of study. But like culture, identity is learned. And so throughout our development and our maturation, we have many roles that we play. Any individual who's listening to this probably has about 10 or 15, maybe even more roles that they play. As a male, as a worker, as a member of the SSSIO International Organization, as a father, a husband, a son, a cousin, an uncle, a brother, or a sister, an aunt. You know, so many different roles that we play. But the problem becomes when we identify too closely with those roles and we over-identify with those roles. If we do too much association with those roles, if we over-identify with the various roles that we're playing on this stage of life, we lose our opportunity to really make practical progress towards the reality of unity. And that's not only outside of us, you know, because we have been acculturated in ways of looking out in the world in a variety of different ways. We look at individuals differently. We look at ethnicities differently, genders differently, people who belong to different faith traditions. And of course, those of us in the SSSIO organization who have worked with interfaith organizations or done any kind of work outside of our own particular groups, we've come to appreciate that we do share a common bond and that there are so many things that we hold in common. And Swami has brought us the human values to show that there is a ground. You know, there is a ground that we all share together, a ground of truth, right action, peace, love, and nonviolence. And there's many other ways, you know, that we can penetrate this problem of over-identifying with that which is less, with that which keeps us from really approaching unity as we really would want to. So anyway, I just wanted to get that out. You know, the idea that we come into the world with our various samsaras, our tendencies, but our task really is not to over-identify with the various roles we play and with the forms that we occupy. That's not going to take us down the spiritual path as we might wish. And we have to follow the teachings, for example, that I enjoyed very much in the Garuda Purana, which really has a refrain that runs across much of that Purana, which says, God is the soul of all. We have to look past the outer, and that's going to take some work. I mean, really, we think about it, as I said earlier, more theoretically, but truly it has to be made practically. And we have seen, especially this year, the great divisions that are present within our country. And we have to bring a counter force to that. We can't continue to allow people to promote division when our goal truly is unity. And that speaks for us as individuals, us collectively as people of good conscience, and all of that. So I just, you know, at the onset, I wanted to acknowledge, you know, the difficulties that some people are facing, some much more than others, as we have seen, and to suggest that we continue to demonstrate our love and compassion and make samasta loka sukhino bhavantu a reality as best we can, doing our part as best we can. So that really, you know, was the intro piece that I wanted to, as we talked earlier, I wanted to talk about identity in pursuit of unity. And of course, without unity, there's no purity. And without purity, there's no divinity, no love. And we're all striving for the divine. We're all striving for love, the experience of constant love, if it's possible. And we know it is, but it takes work. As I said, it does take work and a lot of self-inquiry to get to the goal. So I think perhaps, Greg, I can just stop right here and we can move into our questions. But I'll just say one more thing, which I tend to do. And my wife listens to lots of my talks and she says, yes, but you keep going on, you keep making another point. And I don't want to mess up our interaction by going on and on. But unity is really the only reality. And I've been on fire with this idea since I was very young. And realize how people use, you know, apparent differences as something real and important, when ultimately we know the only thing that's important is looking to the Atma, looking within, looking for the light that shines equally in every human being. But we have to do that practically too, as Swami has taught. So Greg, let me just not carry on and on, which I'm wont to do because that's what I did all my life, talk, to make my profession and my earnings. So we can move on from here now.
Sure, thank you, Hymon.
Thanks for indulging me up to this.
Not at all. That's what we're here for tonight. You've got a lot to share with us, and we're going to get to it. You're quite right. These are indeed unprecedented times. And Swami has pointed out that all that we see in our dreams during sleep vanishes. And when we're awake, What we see and experience during the day is like a daydream. Baba says, you are present in the night dream and you are present in the daydream. This is a concept that is something that Baba really wants us all to recognize. And what many of us who are watching right now and listening don't know is that you've actually recently completed a book about this. And it's very personal to you. We're wondering if you could share with us what the title of this new book is, and also why the book means so much to you.
Well, yes, actually, when I got a little time, I had a couple of very intense roles in the SSSIO organization for some time. And at some point when I got an opportunity, I actually compiled 4 books within a relatively short amount of time. But the book to which you're referring is entitled Night Dream and Daydream Encounters with Sai and Self, Selected Memoirs from Divine Experiences. And what this is, Greg, it's not going to be made available to people as such. I may share it with a few close friends and devotees that I know. It's just a little bit too personal and too deeply spiritual for me to just put out on the market as such. So the thing about it, though, is that it means so much because it took a while to put together. I had kept tapes of my visits. From the very first visit I had to Prashanti in 1985, I started keeping cassette tapes of those visits and also notes. And then sometimes at home, I would record dreams and just incidences that occurred with relation to my spiritual growth and to Swami. And so it was a real fun exercise to put this book together because it brought back all the experiences, nearly everyone that I could recall of with Swami from the very first time that I had darshan with him and began to have dreams of him prior to my first darshan. And also the process of it was just so wonderful. It's like preparing for talk sometimes, you feel this intimate connection because you're asking for his guidance and his presence as you try to prepare something that's worthy and that will inspire people. And so just this intimate feeling as I spent several intense weeks compiling, actually listening to all the cassette tapes, reading all the notes and trying to put them in some sort of order. So it's very personal and it's also very special because of the nature of the content itself. Daydream and night dream encounters with Swami and so.
Right. Well, what we're going to do then is we're going to slowly, bit by bit, try and uncover some of the contents of that as we go through. Now, if we go back in time, back to really almost where it all began during your very first darshan with Baba. It was many years ago. Something quite amazing happened. You were able to give Baba some poetry. And it was something that you had put, I'm sure, a lot of thought and yourself into. Would you be able to describe what that was like, sitting in darshan and giving God your poetry?
Well, I can use some words to try to describe it. But some of these experiences with Swami are indescribable, as you know, and as lots of listeners surely do know. But I had been living in Nairobi, Kenya, the year prior to my first visit to Prashanta Nilayam. And I'd been teaching at the University of Nairobi. And during that year, I decided that I would do some intense sādhanā to really try to prepare myself to see Swami. And so I spent that year putting poetry together, writing poetry. And I finally ended up binding 3 books of poetry, actually 3 copies of the same one. One was for Swami, one was for my wife and I, and then the third one I had made for my mother. And so when I got there, I was sitting in darshan, my very first darshan. Swami comes off that little veranda back in those days where the sand was there and so on. And somehow, he caught my eye, I caught his eye, and he stopped where he was right away and just came directly towards me. And I was sitting there with the book in hand. I lifted it up. He graciously just received it as if it was just a normal sort of thing. I was very excited and really beside myself because it was my first time being there in his space like that. And he immediately stepped back and waved his hand and gave me vibhuti. And then the next day he invited me in for an interview. But offering him the book, it seemed a little routine in a way for me just to offer it because I had thought about him the prior year and I had prepared it just to give it to him and actually dedicated to him as the one among us. And he took it. And so one thing I'd like to do though, Greg, if you don't mind, I'd like to share one poem that was in that book. The title of that one was called Musings and Messages from the Heart. And just one poem from that book. Unattached and unmoved by apparent change, disappointment, or agitation, may we be in harmony and in peace with all that is and all that arises. The clouds and the seasons come and go, like joy and sorrow, pleasure and pain, day and night, heat and cold, fear and doubt, they come and they go. Victory today, defeat tomorrow, delay, return, continue. Unaffected, the wise know the blemish of the surface. Unmoved, they neither come nor go. Unattached, they delight to the waveless depths of no loss, no gain. Full of compassion, they surrender to the perfect pattern that lies within. So that was just one poem. I thought if we were going to mention the book and how special it was, you know, to be able to give it to Swami in my very first darshan, that I should at least share one poem that he received from me.
Yes, absolutely. I'm glad you did.
Just the thought of it, you know, the thought of God himself incarnated on the earth, you know, receiving something that I had put together, that alone, not to speak about all the things that have happened, you know, since that first darshan.
Well, it sounds like you wrote it through you, in fact. There really seems to be some of his main teachings. It's amazing. So that leads me to something else that I wanted to talk to you about, and that is that we understand that no one can live without being dependent to some extent on the material creation around him. And spiritually speaking, this is known as the first stage or the waking stage. And later, when we can acquire faith in divinity, we then transform into the next higher stage. And if we don't stop there at this stage, we can develop to the next higher stage where we can identify ourselves with the Atma. And I was wondering if you could share with us your thoughts in regards to this and what it means when Baba talks about lighting the lamp of love.
Well, you know, I came across that teaching early in my relationship with Swami. And what I decided to do was to prepare something that actually looked like a lamp of love. And over the many years, I've performed several weddings, officiated at several weddings for lots of Sai devotees and many other people. And I would always give them a copy of this at the end of the wedding so that they could keep it and refer to it. But this idea of lighting the lamp of love, you know, he says, I've come to do that, light the lamp of love in your heart, to see that it shines day by day with added luster. Now, I was raised a Christian, and so I remember Jesus saying at one point, I am the light of the world. And he also said at another point, he says that in the Lord you are light, live as children of the light. And so this idea of luminosity, illumination, you know, was always very special to me. And so I put this together, and I'd like to share it now with everyone. Sorry, that happens to be every now and then. But this is it. I'll read it through, and it'll just remind everyone of Sai's teachings. But as I said, this is something that I always put together in a little binder that I give the married couple. And it's in the shape of a lamp. And I've just called it SSSIO's lamp of love. Love and thought is truth. Love and feeling is peace. Love confers joy and wisdom. Love is the basis of character. Love is the greatest of virtues. Love will not tolerate selfish aim. Love and understanding is nonviolence. Love and action is morality and right living. Love is the solvent for the hardest of hearts. Love is the common denominator of all virtues. Love is the giving of selfless service to all in need. Love knows no fear, no untruth, no anxiety, and no grief. Love fulfills, love liberates, love activates, love never fails, love never tires, love takes work. Love is expansion, love cures pettiness, love binds all hearts, love knows no limits, love is giving and forgiving. Love sees the best in others. Love blossoms as compassion. Love is ever distant from anger. Love is tolerance and forbearance. Love adds sweetness to our words. Love is the motive in all the cosmos. Love is one's only lasting possession. And so, as we've all heard so many times, start the day with love, fill the day with love, spend the day with love, and end each day with love, love, love. So Greg, this is why he came, to light the lamp of love within our hearts and to see that it shines more brightly as we mature spiritually and engage in the sādhanā that's necessary for our growth and expansion. And so now especially is a time, this is why I led in with the idea of identity and unity. Now is the time where love has to be so profuse and so nicely and lovingly expressed in so many ways. And we can do it in a million different ways, directly, indirectly, but it's what's called for right now, this love. Now, I have one more slide I'd like to share, which relates to love, because that's, for me, it's mostly unity and love that I focus on most of the time now. And so these are just some quotations that I've referred to as lovely quotes on love. And I'll just read them through quickly. I didn't put the authors here because when I used to teach a lot, what would happen is I would put up quotes or share quotes and they would say, oh, I never heard of that person. Or I don't like that person. Oh yes, I really like this person. And they miss the content, they miss what's there because they're aligning with the author. So I thought I'd just share these with you. The day will come when, after harnessing space, the winds, the tides, and gravitation, we shall harness the energies of love. And on that day, for the second time in the history of the world, we shall have discovered fire. You do not know the gem shining inside you all, the divinity whose effulgence is your intellect, whose reflection is the love you evince. You know too many other things besides this. Now that was Swami. Radiate boundless love towards the entire world, above, below, and across, unhindered, without ill will, without enmity. A life without love is of no account. Don't ask yourself what kind of love you should seek, spiritual or material, divine, mundane, or Eastern or Western. Divisions only lead to more divisions. Love has no labels, no definitions. It is what it is, pure and simple. Love is the water of life, and a lover is a soul of fire. The universe turns differently when fire loves water. And then finally, endless is the effulgent glow and infinite flow of divine love. Radiant truth eternal, joy cascades within my soul. You can see my little cameo there. Shot taken several years ago. Actually, it was a selfie I took some years ago, actually with my computer, I think. But that's when I had hair more like Swami's, although I had gray and no mustache at the time. But anyway, I thought I'd just share those quotes on love so we could keep our focus in the right location.
Yes, very appropriate. Well, let us go back to the time when love was in a human form. Many years ago, a magical time again in Prashanti Nilayam. It was 1985, and you had an interview with Swami, something so very, very special. Share with us, what was it like? What happened?
Well, excuse me. Well, it was the day following the experience of handing him that poetry book. And he brought me, and there were the other people in the interview. It must have been about 11, 12 people, I think, that were in the outer interview room. And I was there alone. So I was just there. But the people there all seemed like they were local people from the local villages and just, around the area. And he called in different people back into the inner interview room. And then at one point, he motioned for me to go back. And so I went, and unfamiliar with the protocols or anything. It was my first time being there, first time seeing him. Although I had been to India once before and had read extensively and had Indian friends and knew a little bit about, various things, I didn't know what to do there. So I went in the inner interview room and just stood there. Swami came up to me and he started speaking about all manner of things that related to my past and my thoughts and present and all that. I just stood there not saying anything. And then at one point, he placed his finger on my third chakra, on the will center. And he held one hand, he held one of my hands, and then with his other hand, he placed his finger there and just left it there. And he continued to talk about various things. And I was just astounded. I don't believe I said one word the entire time that I was there, except when he asked me to leave. He says, okay, time to go. And so he opened the curtain and, motioned for me to leave. And I said, well, are we going to be together again, Swami? And he said, tomorrow. And I said, tomorrow, Swami? Tomorrow morning? And he said, tomorrow. I said, tomorrow afternoon? He said, tomorrow, go. So finally I went back out and joined the others. And the next day I thought he would call me in again because he said, we'll talk tomorrow. But he didn't. But that night, as soon as I went to sleep, he came in dreams. Two very direct dreams, one referring to the interview, actually. But I was there 9 days for that first darshan, first time. And it was something to behold. I've never had an interview since then, a face-to-face interview, but I've had, as he says, several interviews, which is what we really should seek. And of course, I've been extremely close to him many different times, but was never called in for one-on-one after that time.
Yes, 9 divine days and a long life of many beautiful experiences. Is there anything in particular that confirmed to you that Sai Baba is an avatar, is God?
Well, perhaps the preponderance of things, the preponderance of experiences over the years, many of them were very, very incisive. Many incisive experiences that, of course, let me know that he was beyond the beyond. Getting to that point, he's got powers, he's got this, he's got that, but getting to that point of he is God, he is the avatar, that was at some point, I would say, easy enough, because after the demonstration of all the various leelas in his presence, but also in dreams, because I've had numerous dreams. This is partly why I compiled that book. I've counted them over 120 dreams of Swami, and some extremely intimate, some that I didn't even place in the book because I thought it was too much. But there was one experience at Prashanti, if I can share that, if there's time.
That would be lovely. Go ahead.
Okay, and this is in my little book, so I'm going to read it straight through. And in fact, it involves another poem that I wrote for Swami. Several actually, and in one case, he took one poem that I wrote for him directly from me at another time when I was there. But I'll read this to you rather quickly here. In those days, I'm referring to 1997 in this particular instance. In those days, it was my practice to write only while waiting for him in Sai Kuwan Hall. I had worked on this poem for 3 days in the mornings and afternoons and came to that place where I was not sure how it would end. Yet lo and behold, the final 3 lines were given to me immediately upon awakening on the 4th morning of my efforts. Naturally, I was very happy about it, recorded the words, and joyfully began my day. That afternoon, I was sitting in the front row as Sai came closely by. I never reached for Pad Namaskar during darshan. I believed it should only be done upon his call, and it was not for me to even attempt without an invitation or expressed permission. And yet on this particular afternoon, I watched as 2 or 3 men to my immediate right reached for his feet and were able to touch them. As he drew near and arrived immediately before me, I decided to go for them. Yet little did I know what he had in store. The divine Kavi means poet, literally began to play out a part of the poem that he, through me, had completed that morning. And this is the poem. As he looks into my eyes, the doors of my heart fling open. The petals of that flower quiver with delight. I feel his glow inside me. As he looks into my eyes, that joy from peace ascends. Myself effaced, my cares erased. No time, no thoughts, no words. When he looks into my eyes, he sees the pain I've known. He smiles again, my dearest friend. A flood of love engulfs me. Tell me, O seeker, what air is sweeter, his dance, his grace, his glow. Eye to eye, heart in heart, in me, in he, thou me. Just a millisecond before my extended fingers were poised to reach one foot, he withdrew it with supernatural speed. His movement was so quick and surreal that I found myself wondering what had unfolded and why he would not allow me the gesture. It took several seconds to grasp the subtlety of what was unfolding. Caught in the thought of his apparent refusal, my mind began to spin until I was distracted by an incredible golden glow of light that filled his entire head. I was astounded, and all thoughts were suspended as I watched. It was then that I realized he was acknowledging that this Kavi, this poet, had offered a poem to the Kavi of Kavis with these words: tell me, O seeker, what air is sweeter, his dance, his grace, his glow. Feeling the incredible bliss from the grace he now literally began showering upon me, I started to weep uncontrollably for several minutes. At one point, I replaced my handkerchief that had wiped my tears of gratitude and devotion back into my pocket, yet only to pull it out again as the tsunami wave of bliss returned in full force. This experience was beyond the beyond, and any attempts to fully describe it would be wholly insufficient. So this dance, the foot, the glow of golden light that filled his entire head, and in fact erased it. There was nothing but golden light. And then the grace that I felt literally being showered upon me was something that I just, it's just hard to describe. And so that's one instance, I would say. And then there were several others. And I'll share this one quickly with you. and that is this. Soon after I had been appointed to direct the Institute for SSSIO Education in the US, I was working on something associated with it at home. And I had the TV on in the background, sort of, not really paying full concentration to what I was doing and looking up at the screen every now and then. And at one point I looked up at my TV screen, which is what you see here, and saw this, a rose being offered with the bunting as you see it, just as you see it there. My daughter was here at the time. She had spent the night and I asked her to take a picture. I didn't have my camera. And so this was another instance, another in-home miracle, so to speak, that just really took me. And then if you look a little bit to the top and right of the rose, you can see Swami's image in the cosmos. And so this was yet another experience. And I can go on and on with these, this was not so subtle, although it took a moment to understand what he was doing in Kuwan Hall with the dance, the grace and the glow. But anyway, there's just, in my mind, Greg, what can I say? It's the preponderance of things, both large and small, subtle and not so subtle, that have endeared me so much to that reality, that truth of who he actually is.
Yes, I think all of it really talks to your relationship with Baba, a beautiful personal divine chemistry that has grown over time. And that leads me to a question that I had for you is, all relationships go through so many stages and evolve over time. What can you share with us about your personal sādhanā? In particular, what parts of your sādhanā do you think have helped to build that heart-to-heart relationship that you have with Baba now and was in and exhibited even then?
Well, what I've tried to do, and we all criticize ourselves, I'm sure at some level or another, but I've tried to practice his teachings. I've tried to live a life of human values. I mean, I even had that tendency when I was quite young. I was very Catholic when I was little. I was an altar boy, and I almost became a priest. I actually went to a seminary over the weekend, one weekend, and looked into going into the seminary. But I had this strong, strong feeling about God all my life. But when I finally came across Swami, it was, I didn't leave Jesus, and I had been a devotee of Yogananda for some time, but I decided that I needed to follow his teachings. And so that's what I tried to do. I tried to, identify myself as the soul and work on that, for all the years that I've been engaged in sadhana. And as time has gone on, you see God as being distant and so magnificent and almighty and omniscient and omnipotent and all this. And so usually God is somehow distant. But as you continue your practice and do your meditation, which I've done deeply over many, many years, not always consistently, but of late especially, you get all kinds of inner instruction and inner understanding as to your relationship. And I've even had dreams of Swami where in one dream in particular, he stepped in front of me, just showed up right in front of me. And I looked at him, I said, Swami, I don't know what to call you. Should I call you mother? Should I call you father? I don't know what to call you. And then there were other things that unfolded in that particular dream. He didn't give me the answer. But what I had come to at some point, Greg, was to start calling him my friend, my dearest friend. In fact, that was in the poem that I already read. And I noticed, I went through some of my other poetry, some of which he had received, but mostly stuff that I've written since then. And I refer to him, back and forth as friend, as dearest friend, closer to me than I am to me, the phenomenal me. And so I think about that all the time, more and more. The spaces are not so broad in between where my mind is focused on I am he. Just like he has told us, think like this, I am the Atma, I am the Atma. And so I try to practice his teachings. If I believe he's the avatar, if I believe he is who he is, then I do what he says I should do. And so that's not a mystery. It's just if you practice, he responds. And there's no question about that in my mind at all. You do what he suggests, you follow the teachings, you do namasmarana, you meditate, you do service, you love people, you work on identifying yourself with others so that you can feel empathy and compassion. Even if you're not in their space, you identify them as fellow children, brothers and sisters in God, and you send love. We can do that. Even if we're not in their space, we can do that. And so this is what I try to busy myself with, these days, more and more, thinking about the needs in the world, thinking about the suffering in the world, the compassion that's needed, and just pray for people and do things directly when I get an opportunity. But over the years, there's no question that he will guard you, he will guide you, you will feel it consciously and deliberately. Even your practice evolves. And I felt that myself. I've experienced that directly, where I was engaged in some practices, some of which he suggested, and then I get the inner direction, the inner nudge to strengthen this part of the practice or do this a little bit more deeply. And so that's what's come about. And so the relationship has evolved to I am you and you are me. I mean, I said it when I was much younger, in the early years with Swami. But now it takes on a different meaning. That relationship has evolved. And it's not just from my own effort. We have to be honest. It's also from his grace. But you have to earn the grace through dedication, through sacrifice, and through practice. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, that's beautiful. He says, just follow the guidelines, just follow my teachings, and the grace will come. And he works on the relationship with us just like we work on it with him. It's an amazing, amazing phenomenon to experience. Dr. Hymon Johnson, thank you so much for talking to us this evening and shedding some light on the relationship between unity and love. This has been a very special evening. We'd like to thank Dr. Hymon Johnson most sincerely for sharing his thoughts and very beautiful personal experiences, as well as spiritual insights with us.